All right, so good evening, everyone. Again, it's Ryan coming in with the Walker Roundtable, and we have Jeffrey Jr., Papa J, and JPW, Justin Phillip. And we have a really, really interesting day. It's a huge day for legal cases in America and everyone understand what's happening. So I'm gonna send this off to my brother. He's gonna quarterback the conversation and organize some of the questions. And as black men of this great diaspora, we're gonna weigh in and give our perspectives on it. So Bobby, go ahead, take it away.
All right, so yeah, welcome back to episode number 4 of the Walker Roundtable, the Diddy trial. Let's talk about it. These are the facts of the verdict today that we heard. So Diddy was found guilty on 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution, 1 count involving Cassie Ventura, 1 count involving Jane. Acquitted on 2 counts of sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion related to those same 2 women. Acquitted of the racketeering conspiracy charge, and that was the most serious one. That one actually carried life in prison if convicted. Diddy, although they requested for him to leave today, he will remain in custody pending sentencing. So the judge denied bail today, and sentencing is expected October 3rd. And the prosecutors, they're saying and they're estimating that likely it'll be a 4 to 5 year prison term based on the 2 convictions. That's something that we'll find out, right? That's what the judge will decide when it's time. So, wanted to start off with this question about uh, the judge denying bail today. Did he send the right message with keeping Diddy in prison uh, until sentencing actually starts? Let's see who wants to start off with that answer. Justin, you want to start?
Sure. Um, well, before I get into whether I feel like what message that sends if him getting denied bail, ultimately I like to say that I felt that the verdict today was fair. Um, I feel like Diddy was not a great person. But I also feel like Cassie Ventura was was a consenting adult in a lot of the things that she was accusing Diddy of. So the fact that he was dismissed of the more serious charges in terms of the sex trafficking, the racketeering, but he was found guilty on the prostitution, I feel like speaks volumes to um, being fair in a court system that was designed for black men to be reprimanded over extensively. And I feel like he was found guilty on the charges that he should have been found guilty on. Um, because ultimately, I feel like in a 10-year relationship between Cassie and Diddy, um, it says a lot about Cassie if and about her ability to consent to the things that she was claiming she was forced to do if you stay in a 10-year relationship when you have free will. So ultimately, I'll say that I believe that the judgment was fair. I feel like in this case, Diddy is not a squeaky clean person in terms of, you know, what his habits are, in terms of how he carries relationships. Um, but I ultimately believe that the verdict was fair, simply because I feel like these were consenting adults, and then possibly because of um, you know, harboring resentment later on after the relationship is over, probably spilled over into some of these allegations. Who knows? I don't know. But that's my opinion on it. So I do, however, feel that it is it was fair that he did not um, that he didn't receive bail or he was not let go today. And the reason um, that the judge gave, which I agree, was that he does have a history of violent behavior against women. Because I think even though they found him guilty on the prostitution, like we all saw what he did to Cassie in that videotape when he was in the hotel with her, and the assault that he did to her. So for them to say that ultimately he is, a violent man and that he has violent tendencies, for the safety of the people involved, that he remain in prison until his court date or until his sentencing for the prostitution charges. I don't feel was a bad decision ultimately. I do feel like he was punished to the extent of the law to which he should have been punished. So that's how I feel on it.
Yeah.
Diddy.
Yeah, I agree with Justin that it was a fair sentence, but it's a double-edged sword, so to speak. I think the defense welcomed him not receiving bail. There's two reasons for it. Because at sentencing, which is probably going to happen in October, I think he's going to stay in jail until October. He will be granted time served. And he is looking at probably, and I'm just predicting this, less than 2 years with time served. So if he gets 5 years, whatever time he's had in jail thus far, he'll get credit for that. And I'm thinking that he'll get less than 2 years. But I think that, these types of trials, these types of high profile trials, it's all about money. And I think that, the crimes that he was found guilty of, that's something I think in his world of entertainment, um, that goes on probably more than just this trial indicated. I mean, this is something I think that is part of the entertainment industry. But I think that with his sentence, or not with his sentence, with him being denied bail, it's going to give the defense a good strategy to ask for time served. He'll serve probably less than 2 years in jail, and probably less than that, if it's a good behavioral type thing. But maybe in the federal system, I don't know if you're eligible for good behavior. Whatever you're sentenced to, you're sentenced to. But his history shows, like Justin said, his history shows of violence towards women. It's no doubt, man, that video that CNN uncovered, it just tainted the case for him seeking a not guilty verdict all the way around. It was something that was damning to his defense. He could not escape that, even though that was not used as a crime that he committed against her, domestic violence. That was not part of any of the charges. But again, I think it was a good thing that he was denied the bail. It'll give him an opportunity to stay in jail a little bit longer. Time served will go against, the ultimate sentence that he's going to get. He's going to get credit for that. But, the message that this sends, it may send a message of deterrent to some people. But again, being in the entertainment industry, having millions of dollars, I don't know if it's going to cause a deterrent to anybody. I just think it may damage his reputation a little bit. But then again, on the other hand, it may not. That's my take on it.
Actually, thanks, Daddy. Ryan, let me start you off with a question that kind of tails off of what was just said. Um, is there room for in the public perception of Diddy? Is there room for forgiveness? Is there room for redemption after now this trial, a year of what we've heard and learned about his dealings behind, behind closed doors, do you think the public and the previous fans and folks that did business with him, things like that, you think that they will forgive and forget? He'll be redeemed because he was acquitted, with these larger charges. Um, what's your take on that?
All right, so I'm going to go real deep with this. Okay, so y'all give me a little bit of room. So I think you have to look at the cultural fabric of this country, right? And you have to look at as black men, we can't forget our culture. We can't forget our heritage. We're African Americans. Our history comes from the motherland. So with that being said, I think the cultural perception of men that are extremely successful, you're guilty and proven guilty, right? And even if you're found innocent, they're still going to make that burden super hard for you, right? So I look at it from a like a very, very different sort of dynamic um, than most. I think that, I felt that he was innocent from the beginning of everything, right? And basically what happens is you have this billionaire, super successful, flashy person with all the jewelry, the fame, and the money, right? And then you have um, this younger, attractive woman that comes into the frame as a singer, and this video comes out, right? And and he gets, he settles for, I think, some like $30 million um thing, and it's very damning. The video is very damning. But when you peel back the layers, if I'm not mistaken, from what I heard, she was abusive towards him as well, right? So it was violence and it was a domestic thing. So they were shaping this narrative based off of a hotel leak that they signed an NDA for, and he already settled. So from the beginning, I didn't understand why the court would allow that in as evidence when it wasn't even part of the charges. So they allowed a narrative to be shaped and to be played over and over in the head of people. So it's like, okay, we want to shape him as this type of villain. But in reality, when you look at the things that she was a party to, they were abusers to each other. They were in an abusive relationship. I'm not saying he's a good guy or he's a Boy Scout, but she's not a Girl Scout, right? And I think that because she's so young and she looks like this innocent, she presents so innocent, like an innocent Girl Scout, that they assume that she's innocent, right? Or they assume that she's not a part of the salacious sort of lifestyle. And everything that basically came out, the reason why they didn't, he didn't get hit with the most, like the RICO charge and the sex trafficking and all that, is because it was consensual. And I think it was like two other Jane Doe girlfriends that he had, it was a consensual act. And because he was the person that I guess was influencing, driving the bus per se, but there's nothing illegal about influence, persuasion, or even good coercion. I mean, it's a relationship. I mean, and it goes both ways. I can influence somebody if I'm in a relationship with them and vice versa. So I think they painted this image of him as being this really, really bad person. And I think that there are a number of things that preceded. I think he won like some legal cases against some big companies. And I think once you get too high, I mean, there's a lot of things in common with black men that are billionaires. You see Tyler Perry, Jay-Z, Bill Cosby, and it's always this real very like it's this very inconsistent narrative that's being painted, and we don't really necessarily see all of you have to really read the tea leaves and be truly invested to have paint a fair picture. So I don't think the playing field in a court of public opinion is fair, because based on everything I saw, I mean, people still, it's like, oh, he still, is guilty of something, right? He beat her up. I'm like, okay, he's an abuser, but she's also an abuser. And they decided to stay in a relationship for 10 years. So that he's not charged for that. He didn't sex traffic. And then one other thing is that in the state of New York, it's escort services are legal just like in Nevada, right? It's illegal to pay for escort services at a fixed rate, that creates prostitution. But then they got him with the interstate stuff, basically saying that, he was coordinating between the states. So from my perspective, I feel like it's a um I think black men in this country, and I mean even folks at my level, right? Um I mean, and just with family courts, it seems like it's this implicit bias, like you come in and you're the villain. And if there's a woman involved, and there's foul play, you're more accountable than she is, even if she's doing the same exact thing. And it sounds like to me, based on everything I heard, that it shouldn't have just, if they were bringing a case, they should have been bringing a case against both of them. And she was doing the same exact thing, enjoying the same exact lifestyle, with, doing the same things with all of these people. And for whatever reason, he was the person that was singing because he was the big fish with all of them. So I don't think I, I mean, you would have to reel back the cultural fabric hundreds of years to really make it stick. Say, okay, we're innocent to proven guilty. You're going to get a fair shake. We're going to allow it to be fair in the public's eyes because, even now he still haven't had a due process. He hasn't had a bail hearing. He's been sitting in jail. I mean, you look at all the other salacious things that have happened with real prominent men. They have at least had some level of due process to where they can pay the bail bond, sit at home, and go through that process. But I doubt it. Highly doubt it.
Let me just chime in real quick on two things. Um, with he was denied bail. They gave him bail today, or they denied it today. Um, with sex trafficking, or no, yeah, with the two counts that he was found guilty on, which was prostitution. Um, the interstate travel between the people that he was supposedly having sex with, or bought sex from, or had them engaged in sex acts, weren't even named in any of the RICO charges. In a RICO case, you would think that the organization would be just like in a mob organization. Those that trickle down from the head of the mob are charged also. So how can you have a RICO case and nobody else is charged? So I don't think he's gotten, I think the jury, when they looked at that, they said, there was no enterprise. There was no enterprise. It was just him, you know? So I think he didn't get a fair shake that way.
And you know what? I'll
And
say this. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
go ahead, no.
And I'll say this. I compare it to, I mean, we're coming at this from. I'm taking it from our cultural perspective, right? I look at somebody like Hugh Hefner, who was the head of Playboy for, I don't know, half a century. He was a well-known swinger. He had a business behind it. His facility was basically a public playground for the Hollywood elite to come in and enjoy themselves in public. And I mean, he had reality shows around this. And to me, it felt like he was doing the exact same thing that Hugh Hefner was doing. He was swinging, having parties, and it was consensual. And I think, and I think it's as simple as because he's a black man that he can't leave that. They feel like it's taboo for him to lead that sort of lifestyle, with impunity. And I feel like that's a just a pure issue. And I'm like, if all of these if it's consensual, and these women are saying, "Oh, well, I'm doing it to please him." Okay, you're in a relationship and you're making those decisions as an adult. So if you're making those decisions as an adult, how is he accountable for what, even if you could say it's coercion or he had all this power or whatever, if you're not shackled to the ground and you're doing it for the lifestyle, there's no police reports. And these are, 10-year relationships, 15-year relationships with different people. I'm trying to figure out, when a relationship crashes out and maybe the lifestyle dries up, why is it that he has to be accountable for the decisions that were made? that people
Yeah.
were in these relationships with them. I don't understand it.
Well,
Well,
Justin, let me.
I gotta, I want to piggyback off that, Ryan. So like now, I want to ask like y'all a question. So like now that, because I do feel that the question of Cassie not having any free will, or she didn't consent to any of these um, actions that she was a part of with Diddy. I think the jury saw through that simply for the fact that you were with this man for a decade and you didn't at any point leave or file any police reports in between time while you were in this relationship with him. So I feel like the question of was she coerced into these acts or was she a willing participant? Because I believe it's pretty, in my opinion, pretty easy to see, well, to say that you were abused, but then on the other side, how can you be a victim of abuse if you are a person who has free will and you are staying actively being a willing participant in these actions for over 10 years. So my question is this. Now that the jury basically has said their piece on what they feel he's guilty of, do you think this is going to have any backlash, any public backlash on Cassie and how her reputation is going to be viewed? Because I think now in the age of you know, people like Jonathan Majors and the woman that was falsely accusing him, women like Amber Heard falsely accusing Johnny Depp. Um, I'm not saying that everything that Cassie was saying was a falsehood or everything that she said about Diddy was a lie. I do believe that there may have been things that she says that Diddy coerced her into that she was a willing participant of, but she didn't admit to that. Do you think there's going to be blowback on her reputation as far as people saying that she was some type of person just looking to come up off of money from Diddy?
Yeah, you know what? Let me just say this. With her, I don't think that there's going to be too much blowback on her because she's going to be out of the entertainment business. I don't think she's going to be in anybody's studio trying to make any kind of music after this trial. I think she's probably going to be faded off into the Monica Lewinsky type of a environment where she's going to sit back, use that $30 million, maybe write a book or two to make a couple more $1 million, and that's it for her. Public opinion, the more she's hated, the more books she'll probably sell. But I think she's going to be just like Monica Lewinsky was with Bill Clinton after she, got him exposed to whatever happened in the White House. What happened to Monica Lewinsky? What the public opinion? They hated her. They hated Monica Lewinsky. And after that, she just faded into the woodwork, wrote a couple books, and just faded away. I think she's going to have the same result.
Yeah. You know what? I think about it. I think about it as a little bit different. I think that we live in a real I think negative society, but I think it's at a hyperscale level. What do I mean by that? You have all the different social media platforms and they reward bad and I think they reward controversial behavior. So controversy and infamy I think go hand in hand with this. So I think that she's going to definitely have blowback because you got to think Diddy has a following. He has a following too. He has a support system around him and he has his fans. But I also think that the whole idea of believe a woman, like if a woman says that something happened, it has to be true, right? So we're going to automatically give her the benefit of the doubt. She could be lying through her teeth. She could have every ill intent. It could just be she could just be a horrible person, right? And there still, I think, will be networks. And I'm not saying she is. I mean, I'm just calling balls and strikes from what I personally feel, just the accountability and responsibility as far as being a grown adult and taking ownership of your actions. But I do think There's going to be networks, there's going to be outlets that are going to give her money for interviews, book, like you said, book deals, maybe a reality show. But I think that she'll be able to, if she's not too, um, intimidated by the whole thing, and she's able to kind of get an apparatus around her, and maybe a good manager, she'll be able to capitalize on it for sure. Because the offers they'll be coming in from the networks, just boom, 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 boom.
Well,
So.
there's going to be a movie deal.
Oh yeah. I mean, and I think that with the way people, how much people love money in this day and age,
It's going to be,
it's gonna be something that's gonna happen. I feel so. I think that she's gonna have some blowback, but I think it's gonna open some doors for her too.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
I got another question for y'all. Um, with with this whole environment that we live in now, you know, the movement of believe all women, um, which I believe is not a feasible movement because you can't blindly believe anyone. You can't blindly believe all men. You can't blindly believe all women, because people have the free will to lie. Um, when I look at these types of cases and I look at because my mind is going to the Jonathan Major situation, which isn't the same situation, but it has parallels, right? Here you have a man who's been accused by a woman and his reputation gets ruined. Um, and whether or not he's found guilty or innocent, that stain on his reputation is there forever. Um, and there seems to be very little to no um, criminal charges or any potential legal blowback on the women. Um, and I don't know if Diddy may try to countersue Cassie for any of the things that he's now been found innocent from, and now there may be some type of legal retaliation that she may face. But how do you feel about this whole society in terms of their lack of punishing women who blindly accuse men when ultimately those men were innocent?
Well,
And then we just see no punishment being given to the women afterwards.
I think it's toxic. It's demoralizing and marginalizes our culture in a lot of ways. I mean, and that's men across the board. I think that the judicial system doesn't do a good job of that because if you could sit there and lob some sort of allegation towards somebody and they get put in jail, their freedom gets taken away, their reputation, and that person doesn't get held to that same standard if it's found to be false. If it's found to be false and it's just a pure lie, right? It's a pure lie. You're not held to the same sort of standard. So like, I mean, I look at Kobe Bryant, which is I think one of the most famous cases where his he was facing 20, 30 years in jail. He became the Black Mamba after that. He was just a terrible, terrible person. But then the case got thrown out because I feel like, there was some inconsistencies on his accuser's part, right? But we never really knew who she was. She just, faded away into the background. The case got thrown out, and then I think he ended up paying her some money on the civil side, right? But she got to live her life in peace even though he was Kobe Bryant and stuff, he was forever kind of tainted. So I think, unfortunately, like that same stand, it can't be normal or routine for us to kind of have that be an integral part of our society, especially with brothers, because it's like your whole world can come down, and a woman can just say anything, and if she's angry, you're in a bind, and your life could be turned upside down. So I think it's absolutely terrible. I think that there should be way more fairness. It should be equality and equity across the board. I pray that the generations that come after us are able to see that, but we
Yeah.
don't have it currently.
Well, look, you got the perfect example here in Houston, right? When you got somebody like Deshaun Watson, right, who gets accused, I think it was 23 women that accused him of sexual assault, and I think I don't know how many were dismissed, but there was no counter lawsuits or anything like that against any of these women because I don't know if any of them were caught up in a lie, so to speak. I think either the attorneys that represented them, um, I don't know, covered it up to a point where, you know what, I don't know why you can't sue these women for, being liars in court. But they targeted Deshaun Watson the same as I think they targeted Diddy. This kid was making all this money, and he's an easy target. I mean, he's an easy target. Who wouldn't want to walk away with 20, $30 million just to accuse somebody of, something that may be just a casual relationship at one point, and then it turns sour. So, we're targets at all levels, I think. And I think especially with this type of, world that we live in with types of relationships and women that are out there, men that are out there too. I mean, it's a two-way street. I always say that. But, we're targets for this type of thing. I don't care what income level you're at, whether it be Diddy, Watson, Bill Cosby, it doesn't matter. If the money's there, a lot of people seek it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I know that we're probably going to end up having a wrap here. But if y'all, on the backside of this, maybe you have to pick it up on another episode. It's and discuss a little bit more. But that's a good discussion, and I think that it's key that we all kind of have these understandings and we protect ourselves at all times. Protect yourselves at all times, protect your assets, and make good decisions.